even a book.
So President Obama is saying it's easier to get books, or easier to get guns than a Glock, which is a really common pistol. So you can play the next one. You're going to know the title is very biased, but just listen to what it says.
This is a ghost gun. This right here has ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half.
Oops. Nice.
Magazine clip in half a second. This is a ghost gun. This right here has ability with a 30 caliber clip to disperse with 30 bullets within half a second. 30 magazine clip in half a second.
All right, we good. And then, so these are like public figures, right? These are people that are supposed to, that one's a senator, that one's a president. They're supposed to, serve us. They're supposed to lead us, and they're kind of saying these things that make gun owners go, wait, what's going on? Like, wait a second. And then you have comments like, guns don't kill people, people kill people. Well, if people didn't have assault rifles, they wouldn't be able to go to massive shooting sprees. And then, the rest of the world looks at American wonders, what the fuck are you guys up to? Weekly mass shootings and all, you constantly defend the right for crazy people to own assault rifles. And I'm like, do they know what an assault rifle is? Because there's an actual definition as opposed to assault weapon, right? So what they're saying, are they saying what's repeated by the media? Or are they saying things that have factual evidence backed up, right? So, I see these things after, the recent mass shootings, and, I'm not going to get into like the politics of that, but these are things that kind of stuck out in my head and saying, is this really correct? So, yeah, let's continue. So, why am I here? So, I see a lot of people post on Facebook, right? Yes.
Can you just back up a little bit?
Okay.
Yeah.
So after like the Orlando shootings, the San Bernardino shootings, I see a lot of people post on Facebook, like, gun violence is going up. Guns are killing more people than ever, and then people shouldn't be owning guns. The rate of gun ownership is going down, right? And then I see this stuff on Facebook, and I try to avoid like Facebook arguments because that's just like a path you don't want to take. But I see some stuff like that. It kind of irritates me, but I kind of don't say anything. And then Owen posts this Vox article. And I know Owen's a really cool dude. So instead of engaging in some Facebook argument, like comment argument, y'all seen those, I'm sure. I messaged him and say, hey, I read that article and there's a lot of misinformation. And if you want, we can talk privately. And Owen's like, I'll do you even better. Why don't you come present? And I was like, well, shit. So let's see what this article says. These three basic facts demonstrate America's unique gun culture. There is a very strong correlation between gun ownership and gun violence, a relationship that researchers argue is at least partly causal. American gun ownership is beyond anything else in the world. At the same time, these guns are concentrated among a passionate minority, yada, yada. And then the next header, more guns means more gun deaths, period. And so when you read articles, right, you should try to source them. You try to like figure out where they're getting these numbers from. So I tried to do it with this Vox article, and I can send you guys this presentation. You look at the article; they don't actually have numbers or sources or data to support that claim. They kind of just say it and leave it at that because it's something it's emotional, right? Like, of course, guns are evil; they kill people, right? So they kind of like very sneakily go to the next point, which is America has the most gun deaths, which is true. But they never support this claim that there's a very strong correlation between gun ownership and gun violence. So why am I here? First is to educate y'all about guns. How many people here shot a gun before? How many people shot an AR-15 before? I know you did. How many people own guns? Oh, cool. What do you have?
22 and a shotgun. I don't know what caliber it is. It's like for shooting pigeons.
It's all good, man. It's all good. So I'm here to kind of explain how a gun works, gun safety rules, and also kind of delve into these numbers that kind of show up, right, in articles, Facebook, MSNBC, even Fox News. So, yeah. All right. Y'all, I know Daniel and the server guy didn't really talk about safety, but I have all you guys here. This is a great opportunity. Let's talk about gun safety because, it's just good to know. There's many variations, but these are the four, that are the most important. The gun is always loaded. Never point the gun at something you're not prepared to destroy. So, what does that mean? The gun is always loaded. I don't care, if you have the gun, you check it's not loaded, you still treat it as it's loaded. You can have it in pieces, you still treat it as loaded. There's a reason why that's the first rule, right? And then never point the gun at something you're not prepared to destroy. So when you're carrying a gun, right, in your house, you treat it as loaded even if it's not. You point it at the ceiling, point it at the ground, right? You don't want to play around and point it at your friend, kind of horsing around, because at least if you shoot the ceiling, it's okay. No one's gonna die. Or if you shoot the ground, right? So, that's the second rule. My old roommate, Andrew Callahan, I don't think he's ever, bless his heart. The very first time he saw my guns, he takes the barrel and goes, "Oh, cool! What is this?" I'm like, "Bro, stop!" And then I had to go over the rules, So, you think that people like us, software engineers, we would know, but we get excited. We're like, "Oh my God, it's like Call of Duty! Shit! Like, let me check it out." So, yeah. Always be sure of your target and what is behind it. So if you're shooting at a target, a piece of paper is not gonna stop a bullet, right? You want to have a backstop. So you want to be sure of what you're shooting at and be sure what's behind, like what you're shooting at. So this goes with target shooting, hunting. If you're in law enforcement, if you have to use it in a lethal way, that's also been the thing about. And then finally, keep your finger off the trigger until your sight's on the target. This is also very important because I swear to God, I see Hollywood posters, right? You look at Resident Evil posters or whatever, and you see them, they got the two pistols looking cool as shit, and they got the fingers on the trigger. And all the gun people are like, "What the fuck are you doing? You're teaching kids, it's okay that you keep your finger on the trigger." So keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot. You guys got that? All right, there'll be a test later on. No, I'm serious.
How does it work?
All right. AR-15s. So AR-15s are kind of like, people kind of see them as or not a lot of people, but maybe a lot of liberals see them as this really evil rifle, right? They're assault rifles. AR stands for assault rifle. Well, no, it doesn't. It actually stands for Armalite. Armalite is the company that created the first AR, right? So it's just an unfortunate coincidence. So just go real quick. Widely regarded as now as the civilian legal version of the M4 carbine. If you play video games, you probably know what that is. 1959, the AR-15 was adopted by the USA as a M16, so assault service in Vietnam, Korea, stuff like that. I think later on in Korea. 1963, Colt made the first civilian version. And right now, there are, it's hard to get an exact figure, but based on what I've been searching, there's 5 to 10 million ARs in the States. It is the most widely owned and popular rifle. It is probably like the Honda Civic of rifles. And it's funny because it's I see all these media people blasting it, saying it's it kills babies. Well, that doesn't actually kill babies, but it's just evil, right? And then we in the gun community are like, wait, that's like you saying my Honda Civic is evil. This is such a popular gun, we're so familiar with it. But again, maybe just the way it looks, it's a black rifle. It's threatening. So I brought my AR. Don't worry, I have the firing pin taken out. So even if you put a loaded magazine in here and you try to press the trigger, nothing's going to happen. So how does this work? Right here. So I have in here snap caps. So they're not real bullets. They have a rubber primer and they're made out of sheet metal. So don't worry, nothing's going to happen, right? So you put it in, right? And then you press the trigger, right? The bullet comes out, and then so how is it semi-automatic? So when a bullet ignites, it's like a mini explosion, and it creates a lot of gas. So I don't know if y'all can see, but gas gets collected in this gas block, right? Through the gas tube into the bolt, and then out. So I forgot to load it. So let's do that again. So goes in, gas comes out, pushes the bolt back, and when the bolt pushes back, two things happen. The shell is ejected, right? And there's a spring back here that pushes the bolt back in to load the next round. And then you press the trigger again, it's ejected, so on and so forth. So, yep, that's how it works. And then what does it shoot? So I actually brought a real bullet. It shoots 5.56 or 223. And a lot of media people say, oh, it's a high-powered round. But if you shoot guns, you know that this isn't really that high-powered. Other countries use AK-47s. They use 7.62 by 3.9.
What do those numbers mean?
Huh?
You said lots of numbers, but what do they mean?
Oh, okay, my bad. So 5.56 means I think the diameter is 5.56 millimeters, and then 7.62 is bigger, and then 223 is just the inch version of that. So yeah, so pass this around. It's unloaded, and y'all can take a look at it, and then y'all can take a look at the bullet too. So, yep, let's hit AR-15.
Friendly reminder not to point at anyone.
Yep, there you go. Okay. So, yeah. Continuing on. So, can you click the link and open that link in the browser? So, y'all hear about assault weapons and assault rifles, right? You hear those terms in the media all the time. So, what is an assault weapon? And
It's not clickable. Assault weapon.
you can just Google it.
info.
Yeah.
Assault weapon?
.info.
And if you don't mind just clicking through it. So what is an assault weapon? What's an assault rifle? These terms get thrown all around all the time. But I don't really actually think like people know what they are. So let's go through. We already know they are. 15 is the most common example. Wait, go back. Example of what are assault weapons? What does it mean? So go on. First, it is important to understand what an assault weapon isn't. The terms assault weapon and assault rifle are often confused. So according to these guys, prior to 1989, the term assault weapon did not exist. It is a political term developed by anti-gun publicists to expand the category of assault rifles. Now, this is like a very biased statement, but if you actually go and research it, it's true. No one really used the term assault weapon before that time. So if an assault weapon is not an assault rifle, what is an assault rifle? So that's the M4 carbine. If you play video games, like shooting games, you probably know what that is. So the M4A1 is fully automatic. You all know what that means, right? You hold the trigger, shoots a lot of bullets, right? It can fire, up to 950 rounds per minute. Continue. So the M4A1, automatic AK-47s, they're all called machine guns. In 1986, the government actually banned the sale of machine guns. Y'all know what that means, right? So you actually can't own an assault rifle. No matter when the media is like, oh, he has an assault rifle, we shouldn't let people own assault rifles. Well, it's been banned for 30 plus years already.
Didn't that expire at some point during the Clinton administration?
That was the assault weapons ban, not the assault rifle. See how it gets confusing, right? And when you introduce confusing terms, they kind of get mixed up. So now people use assault weapon and assault rifle interchangeably. When in fact, one has a clear definition, and the other doesn't really. What's up?
I thought you could own assault rifles as kits where you don't assemble it, but you have the parts.
You can have the parts, but you can't own either the automatic trigger, right? That's very expensive, right? Because you can only buy those that are before 1986, or you can't own the receiver, because the receiver is actually like the gun. I'll show you in a sec. So yeah, but anyway, continuing on. So the AR-15 can fire between 45 and 60 rounds, right? It can't fire 950 rounds. It's not automatic. So if you see AR-15s at a shooting range, they're not assault rifles. They're semi-automatic, just like continuing on. So just quickly, what some people call assault weapons function like every other normal firearm. They only fire, one bullet each time the trigger is pressed. So just beating the point that you can't own assault rifles. So that AR-15 right there, it's a lot like this. It's semi-automatic. One squeeze, one bullet. Right? Continuing on. And that shotgun, semi-automatic. And that pistol, right? And that, so on and so forth. Continue on. But why is this not evil and not targeted by the media? And why?
Wood is friendly.
And why is this targeted if the core function is the same? So continuing on, it's perception. Handgun restrictions not simply viewed as a priority. Assault weapons, they're easy target. They look. I think they look badass, but they look evil. So it's an easy target. Continuing on. We can skip this. But because they were such an easy target, there's things like whoever mentioned the 1993 assault weapons ban, right? It would ban the sale of new assault weapons to American civilians. But hold up, there's an issue. Continuing on. It wasn't the term assault weapon wasn't defined. So how are you going to ban something that's not defined, right? Continue. So what they did, and California kind of led this charge. Dianne Feinstein, you all know who she is. She's the senator. She kind of led this charge. What they did was they defined assault weapons by cosmetic appearances, right? So continuing on. So for example, it's got a stock, bad. We don't want that. Oh, it's got a pistol grip. It protrudes conspicuously. Those are words in the California Bureau of Firearms law. It says protrude conspicuously. It's got a detachable magazine, right? But according to the Department of Justice study, assault weapons were only used in 2% of gun crimes. Continuing, and then continue on, and then continue. So blah 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 blah. And all right, we can go on. But You can exit out of this. Thanks, Owen. Appreciate it. So that's pretty much the gist. So if someone says assault weapon, now you kind of know what they mean. We're just really talking about the look, right? Because I can hold this down as long as I can, but it's not a machine gun. It's not an assault rifle. It's a semi-automatic rifle, or semi-automatic rifle. So too long didn't read. Assault weapon term is a media creation. Assault rifles have been banned for 30 plus years. So that's that. And then, go back on. So these are articles, and if you read them, so this one's by the New York Times. I think they're liberal. And then here's the flow chart. We'll go into that later. A lot of research has shown that rifles in general aren't used in a lot of like gun crimes. The majority is pistols. So the reason why they try to ban these is because they look evil and they're an easy target. But in my personal opinion now is that if you really want to stop gun crime, you need to ban pistols, because though pistols are by far, handguns are by far the most, like the firearm that is most used in gun crimes. So continuing on. So how do we get a gun? So y'all heard President Obama say it's easier to get guns than books or computers. Now maybe he was talking about the inner city, right, where things are a little different than that, right? What's up?
No, I was just wondering on the proportion of pistols versus other weapons.
We'll get into that. There's a picture I'm going to show y'all. So it's a big difference, as I can tell you. I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah. So how do you get a gun? So we're going to compare two states: North Carolina, my favorite state. Go back. Federal law and then California laws. So continue.
You can use the.
So how do you get a gun? So these are federal laws. They're true for every state. So there's several, but here are the important ones. The barrel has to be 16 inches, right? It cannot be automatic. We went over the assault weapons ban, the assault rifle ban. See, even I get confused, right? The media totally fucked me up. So it can't be automatic, right? And you can't own a suppressor. Some states, actually most states, allow you to own a suppressor or a short barrel rifle. You just have to pay a tax, fill in an application, the ATF processes it. It takes about a few months, and then you can own one of those, right?
Do you want to explain what a suppressor is?
Oh, so a suppressor is a thing that you put on top of the barrel that just mutes the sound.
Silencer.
Yeah, but a silencer is kind of a misnomer because you watch movies, right? And it's like whisper quiet. But that's actually not how it works in real life. It's still pretty damn loud, but it's not like destroy your ears loud, which is what a gunshot is, right? So like if you wanted a suppressor, people are like, why do you want to be completely silent? Like no, like if I shot a suppressor in this house, like the neighbors would hear. As opposed to if I shot a gun, people miles around would hear. So so don't believe the movies, right? Don't believe the media, don't believe the movies. Suppressors are still pretty loud. You can just shoot them without hearing protection. So yeah. And then finally, this is very important. If you want to buy a gun, you have to go through an FFL dealer. This is true for like every state. So I can't Amazon Prime a gun. I can't be like, oh dude, that looks cool. Let me order that and have it shipped to my house. If you believe that was true, I'm telling you that's not. What's up?
So wasn't Walmart one of the licensed firearm dealers?
Right, Walmart. Actually, I think if you go into Walmart in the southern states and maybe some other states, you can buy AR-15s from Walmart. But it doesn't mean that you can just walk in and pay for like food, and you still have to go through the process. And that process through the FFL dealer includes a universal background check. So if you hear the media, right? I'm shitting on the media a lot. I'm sorry, but it's just the way it is. Like if you hear the media go, we want universal background checks. Well, they're kind of already implemented. What's up?
So isn't it the whole like gun show loophole where you don't actually have to do that in like a private sale?
Right. I'll talk about that if we have time at the end. So both sides are right in that, but it's all perception. So that's very important. So let's say I'm in Texas, right? Texas got pretty lax gun laws, and I want an AR-15. I walk up to Walmart. I go, hey, I want that. All right. They go, hey, okay, fill out this form. Check off if you're a felon, if you've been accused of felonies, if you're mentally ill. We're gonna take this form. We're gonna run a background check through this computer system we have. If it comes out clean, all right, then you can pick it up. So that's how it works in like a relatively lax or really lax gun law state like Texas. So yeah. So how do you get a gun in California? Because what's up?
So isn't one of the issues with the background checks though that like they aren't sharing the information across the systems?
I do not know about that, but I do know it's federal. So if they're not sharing it through a federal database, that means someone fucked up hard. So,
yeah,
yeah.
I think it's
Right.
like not, or because like the laws broken aren't brought up to a federal level necessarily.
Interesting. I never heard about that, but I'd love to hear more if you have links or whatever.
I'd have to pull up the articles.
Yeah. It's so it's not like California has its own it's literally called, it's like an NICS. It's a universal check. So if there's fragmented information, I would say that's more an issue of the infrastructure as opposed to laws existing right now.
Yeah.
So how do you get a gun in California? So it's a little bit more of an involved process. You must take a firearm safety exam, right? Then FFL runs a background check, and then it submits an additional dealer record of sale to the state. So on top of the background check, California wants a record of sale. Gun supporters argue that this is basically registration. You're keeping track of the sale, who made the sale, and then gun control people are like, no, it's not actually registration. I'm not going to comment on that. You guys have their own opinions, but the fact is that the record of sale is kept track of by the state. And then if you're moving into California, like when I moved here, I had guns, I had to register them. And then you can only purchase handguns from a DOJ approved roster. So if that handgun you want wasn't on the roster, you're out of luck. And how gun companies get their guns on California rosters, they pay like a pretty hefty tax. And California does their own separate testing on the handguns for it to be approved. So if you're like a gun control person, you're like, obviously like that's good, right? That's more precautions. And if you're a gun supporter, you're like, wait a second, like the DOJ list is growing smaller every year because companies don't want to submit to this testing. So you're actually just limiting what the citizens can buy. Like you're actually limiting handguns. So it's different views. I'm just telling you both of them. So yeah. And then once you make the purchase, you have to wait 10 days before taking it home. The reason why California does this is because they don't want people buying guns in a rage, right? Like let's say your girlfriend cheats on you, your boyfriend cheats on you, and you get really mad. They don't want someone to just walk in the gun store. Let me get a gun, get it, shoot someone, right? So California has that, and it's funny. Assault weapons are banned in California for the same reasons. Now y'all freaking out a little bit, like what is this doing here? This does not fall under the definition of an assault weapon in California for one reason. So we'll get into that later. All magazines must be 10 rounds or less. So even though this is a 30 rounder, it's blocked off. I can only load 10 rounds into it. And that's true for any shotgun, if it has a detachable magazine, rifle, pistol, 10 rounds only. So no short-barreled rifles at all. Like you can't pay a tax. California has more stringent laws on it, so they don't really go with the federal. Like I don't want to say they don't go with federal law. They just make the federal law more strict. No suppressors at all. You can't pay a tax at home like in other states. And it's a may issue state for concealed carry. What does may issue mean as opposed to shall issue? North Carolina is a shall issue state. So shall issue state means that if you want to conceal carry like a pistol, self-defense is a valid reason. Like this, like if you take the classes, the state is like obligated to hand you the CCW. If you take the classes, you're not a felon, right? Or you're not a criminal, you pass, right? That's shall issue. It means that California can take a look at your application and be like, nah, I don't think that's a valid reason, right? Because you submit it to the sheriff. And what does that mean practically? It means that in California you can't CCW. Like you cannot put on your reason to have a CCW self-defense or the Second Amendment. California does not count that as valid. So in practice, you can't do it. Now there is a case, I think it's called Heller versus, I forgot the exact case, but in Washington, D.C., the court ruled that like actually self-defense in the Second Amendment is a valid reason, right? So, Peruta versus San Diego or something, right? And then so everyone in California is like, oh great, I can own a CCW, but then Kamala Harris, I think she's now the what is she? The Attorney General. She was like, nah, let's yeah. She was like, nah, I'm gonna appeal that, and I want an en banc ruling. Now, whoever studies law has to help me out, but I think en banc means instead of one judge making the decision, it's like it's a panel of judges. And then I don't know what the status of that is now. I think because it's not like cases are decided overnight, but that's where CCWs are in California. So may issue, what that really means is that you can't conceal carry. And then ban sale of bullet button rifles. We'll get into that. Background check to buy ammo. These are recent laws. So on and so forth. Now, this is one law that I find really interesting. There's a lot of, California's got a lot of gun laws. That's just a fact. This one's interesting. It says, it allows legally owned guns to be confiscated if family or friends believe the owner is a threat to themselves or others. No need for burden of proof or due process, guilty and proven innocent. So this is me talking. I think it's true. So let's think about a hypothetical situation. Let's say I'm playing Super Smash Brothers with Owen or Richard, right? And I kick their ass. I'm like talking mad shit, right? I'm like, yo, you suck. I say things about their mothers that like shouldn't be repeated. And then Owen and Richard are like, you know what? Fuck Jerry. You know? Calls the police. Hey, I think my roommate's mentally unstable and he owns guns and I don't feel safe. So the police can come and just take my guns. So, and that's that. And then I have to prove that I am actually not, an asshole or crazy or whatever. And then maybe I'll get my guns back, right? So this is opinion time. To me, this is it sort of like represents kind of like the best and worst of, policies like this. Like it's very well intentioned, right? Like you want to be able to stop crazy people from doing mass shootings, right? You want to, be able to nip that in the bud as fast as you can, but in practicality, it's a little different. So, yep. Moving on. All right. So I mentioned that assault weapons are banned in California. Can you click the first one, Owen?
Oops.
So in that case, why isn't no one calling the police right now? Well, this actually isn't an assault weapon, and let's take a look at why. So y'all can't really see this, so I'll read it out loud. So an assault weapon is a semi-automatic center-fire rifle that has the capacity to accept a detachable magazine, which this does, and has any of the following: pistol grip, stock, flash suppressor. Oh, I'm in deep shit right now, right? But does this really accept a detachable magazine? Other states have a regular magazine release button right here. They just push it, right? It's like in the movies. They push it and it comes out. If y'all notice, I don't know if the rifle's being passed around. This doesn't have that. You can't push this. This is called a bullet button, right? So you actually need, the law I think defines that you need a tool to detach the magazine for it to not considered a non-detachable, So what's a tool? A bullet. So just by this thing right here, that by the letter of law makes this gun not like a gun that has a non-detachable magazine, I can have all these crazy features. Right? Now y'all are thinking like, are you fucking serious? Like, all you need is something like that? They sell rings, right? With like little like pins that you can just go like that. Like, but then again, now we're critically thinking. Now we're thinking, are these laws actually effective? Are these laws effective against criminals? Or are they just limiting law-abiding citizens, right? Because it's really easy to switch this out. I did this in like 5 minutes before I've gone on the plane and flew here, right? It's really easy to take this bullet button out and put a regular magazine cache. So if a criminal, right, has a gun, has an assault weapon, an AR-15, do you think he's going to give a shit about the bullet button law? There's no like right or wrong answer. It's just something to think about. But anyway, yeah. So this right here, this beautiful little button, allows me to have something like this.
Did you not say any of the following? Not all of the following?
Yeah, but it's any of the following if it has a detachable magazine. If I don't have a detachable magazine, I can have all those.
Okay.
Like literally, they call it evil features. You guys confused yet? Because when I moved to California, I was fucking confused. Like, I was like, shit, these are a lot of laws to think about. And if I break one of them, I could be considered a felon. If I didn't know about the bullet button law and I shipped this to California and, moved here, I technically am a felon, right? And it could have easily been oversight. So, can you click on that second link, Owen? And you have like this crazy flowchart. How do I own a gun? Well, is it a centerfire rifle? Yes. Oh, no, can't do that. Is it an AR rifle? Type? Yes, you can't own it. But then it goes deeper. It's like, oh, so I built this myself, so it doesn't have a brand, but like they actually banned certain brands, right? So just does the brand, does it fall under one of those appendices? Oh, it's not allowed. So it's just the point of this I'm trying to make is that it's really confusing, right? Maybe not confusing to people that lived here, but for people that moved here, it's really confusing. So yeah, moving on. Okay, so how are we going to go to North Carolina? Well, federal laws, right? There's no registration. You still have to run the background check, but no dealer record of state, right? And if you want a handgun, you must apply for a permit. So, and then any private handgun transfers must be done between permit holders. Shall issue for CCW. So if you take the classes, do the training courses, pay the fees, you can own a CCW. Open carry, you know what open carry means? It means like literally you have it out here. It's actually legal in North Carolina, but it may depend on the municipality. So I think maybe Chapel Hill has a different law than like Cary or whatever. And there is no assault weapon ban. I don't think North Carolina believes in things called assault weapons. Part of the reason why I left the state. That's my opinion, by the way. So, yeah. All right, y'all saw that really briefly. So, now you guys have an understanding kind of how to get a gun, what an AR-15 is, what's an assault weapon, what's not an assault weapon, what's an assault rifle, what's not an assault rifle. Any questions before I go on? Because the next part might get a little heated. So, yeah. Any questions? So yeah, what's up?
No,
Okay. Yeah, and these, I try to like say when it's my opinion and when it's not my opinion, but like I'd say 99% you can verify these facts. The slides, I can post them in the Facebook group, and in the notes they have all the links. So I have a link to the Bureau of Firearms in California and the North Carolina DOJ site, and then all that stuff. All right, so gun violence in the U.S. So how many people think gun violence is actually increasing in the United States?
It's bad.
I don't know.
Okay, what's up?
So there's been, I think the main thing is like people are talking about how there's more mass shootings. You can define that as 4 or more people
Right.
are shot. But I think that's the main one I've heard about. That's
Right. So what about like homicides overall or killings overall? Does anyone know?
Generally,
Going
I
down
think
to the 80s doesn't mean it's low enough.
Right. But that's a great point. That's a great point. It's a valid point. Just because it's going down doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean that it's acceptable. But the question I'm trying to pose to you guys is: are guns really the cause of that? Or do guns actually cause homicides? What's the relation? And I'll try to do that. Right? Because it's a very emotional argument. You can if someone kills someone with a gun, you'd be like, oh, guns are the cause of that, right? But if you actually think about it. Think about the relationships between trends, right? Basic statistics. Is it really the case? Now, I'm going to try to answer that using, unbiased sources or sources taken straight from, like primary sources, like, the Bureau, the Department of Justice website, the, Bureau of whatever, like actual government websites. So, yeah. So the answer is that gun violence is actually decreasing by a lot since the 80s, actually. Going back to that Vox article or any other articles, that might lead you to believe, oh my God, people are killing each other with guns more than ever. That's not true. So this is done by Pew Research. Do you all know what Pew is? Pew. Okay, so I did some research on Pew because I didn't want to just take it from some random, conservative site. Pew is, I think, regarded, pretty reputable. So, and you can see that total going down, homicide going down, suicide's actually going a little bit up. And then right here, nonviolent, it's just going down. So you wanted to ask what percentage of, gun crimes or gun killings were pistols. Y'all can't see, so I'm gonna read it out loud. So total firearms are 9,199 in 2009, around a little less than 9,000 in 2010, 8.5-ish in 2011, 8.5 thousand in 2011. A little bit of a rise in 2012, back to 8.8, and then down to 8.4. Now, my argument is not, I'm not trying to say, oh, this is totally fine or this is unacceptable. My point is that if you look at handguns, in 2009, out of the 9,000-ish killings, 6,000 were done by handguns, 351 done by rifles, 423 by shotguns, and then, municipal amount done by other guns. I hope you all got that, right? Because that's a very significant amount of killings on my handguns. So I'm going to pose this question. Why doesn't the government try to ban handguns? Again, I don't have an answer. You all can think about it, right? So gun homicides are going down. It's going to sound crazy coming from me because I'm, you can call me a gun nut. I won't be offended, but it's actually, there's empirical evidence, right? And then you can look at, a snapshot. So all injury, general injury, 60.2 people per 100,000, all poisoning 15, vehicles 10, firearm deaths for 10. That includes homicide and accidents and suicide. So like all deaths, right? Whether you think that's way too much for firearms or not that it's not trying to 1 second, not trying to impress like my opinion. It's just facts that we all can just think about. What's up?
Are those poisoning? I'm guessing since it mentions injury, it's just those poisonings can be accidental, like food poisoning would count.
That's a good question. I would think it's. I don't know if food poisoning counts. I would think it's like a baby goes into someone's medicine.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, that's I don't know. It's a great question. Because people get food poisoning all the time, right? So yeah, something to think about.
Wait, these are all distinct categories, right?
Yeah, distinct. So
Are these deaths in 100,000, or are these like injuries? Like, is it poisoning deaths or injury-related deaths? Or
I think it's all deaths.
okay.
Suicide, what the media doesn't really talk about, right? And it doesn't make it right that they don't talk about it, but they don't really talk about it. So you hear in the media, gun violence is increasing. People are dying more by guns, right? Like more because of guns. And in part, they use suicide, or they don't use suicide explicitly. They use the trends shown by suicide and say, oh, gun violence is increasing, but they don't actually talk about suicide. So suicide is increasing. Oh, sorry. So again, 61% was the highest share in 2000 was the highest on record. And then finally, again, beating the point, firearm-related homicides declined by 39% from 18,000 to 11,000 from 1993 to 2011. Blah blah blah. I mean, y'all can read this later. So now we established that there is actually a decrease in gun violence since the 1980s. What about gun ownership? Right? Is that decreased because there are less guns in households? More guns? That doesn't really make sense. More guns in the amount of guns in households staying the same, right? So if you type in gun ownership households in Google, right, like you'll have a lot of articles from like Newsweek or wherever saying like, oh, gun ownership has decreased, right? By a lot. And that was like the lowest time like households own guns, right? But is that really true? Because if you go to those sites, they all cite the same source, the same study by NORC, right? But is it really true? Because this Gallup poll indicates otherwise, right? So now we have two sources, like which one's true, right? It's gun ownership and this is like per household, right? So it's not like, so like if I have 20 guns, it's not going to skew the numbers. So is it lowering? Do households have less guns now? Do they have more guns, right? Which is to be believed, right? And you have to think about, like, if someone calls me, I know me personally, if someone asks me, hey, do you have a gun at your house? I'm not going to tell them. Like, fuck that. Like, that's none of your business, right? So then there's, poll, like, issues with polling in general. Like, how do people actually want to admit they have a gun? So let's try to take a look at some hard numbers, right? Since President Obama's election, the number of concealed carry permits has soared. You can read the numbers here. Concealed carry permits aren't like guns. You only need one. So it's not like someone buying like 5 concealed carry permits, right? So that's hard evidence. You can go on this website. It's kind of a biased site, but they actually link to the actual like state government pages with the data, and you can take a look, and you can see that it's increasing. And then, whereas a few years ago, 1.2 million Illinoisans held a firearms owners identification cards. That's cards you need to own a firearm in Illinois. They've increased. It's jumped to 1.6 million, and it's actually doubled from I think 2011 from 2012 to 2013. So we have another empirical stat saying that these cards that you only need one of, right? You only need like 5. It's increasing. So, and then finally you have evidence. This is straight from the ATF, by the way. The ATF is the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms. It's a government, it's a government institution. Look at that. Look at what's up.
Okay, so they give out this permit ID, but I mean, owners could pass away, right? They don't do you have to renew it every year?
I think you have to renew it either like once every year or once every 2 or 3 years, right? So, but at the same time, like, it's still increasing. So even if like 50,000 people in 2011, got it, if 60,000.
So it's like active users, basically.
Yeah, because this is an assumption. I wouldn't.
AR-15 rifles have more daily active users than Twitter.
My point is that I think I would assume it's rare that someone will buy one, right, get a permit, and not get a gun.
Yeah.
Right? And again, these are all facts. You can form your own opinions on them. What's up?
This is not the counterpoint. I'm just I'm curious because I think a lot of this output stuff supposes the fear of the Obama administration.
Right.
If I take guns, people want to buy more guns.
Exactly. And I think a certain part is true that there's a minority that just buys a shit ton of guns and drives these sales up, right? But what I've tried to do is look at empirical numbers that say there's actually an increase in things that can measure household gun ownership. Anyway, so yeah. So, all right. So again, I'm not trying to push opinion. So we have just, kind of seen that gun violence is going down, and we have just seen that maybe, depending on what you think, gun ownership is increasing. So let me pose this question to y'all, and you don't have to answer: are guns the cause of gun violence?
Sorry, keep going.
It's cool if you think so. Like I'm not here to convince anyone otherwise. I'm just trying to present data, right? So I mean, no one's going to argue that more guns is less violent, right? But can you argue that more guns means an increase in violence? So it's also the research
is needed.
Right. So anyway, moving on. So defensive gun use. So how do we even begin to measure defensive gun use? Like how do we even begin to measure how many lives guns have saved, right? This survey was it was like President Obama pretty much told these people to do the survey, and then they found that actually the defensive gun use ranges from 500,000 to 3 million, right? And then even this quote's like that seems kind of high, right? Like that's kind of ridiculous, right? So then Clark and Gertz did a study, and they found that there's between 2.1 and 2.5 million DGUs annually. And you're all still thinking, that's kind of high. That's a lot, right? Oh, by the way, Gertz, I don't know about Clark, but I think Gertz or one of the two, they're registered Democrats. So I'm trying to say that it wasn't like some gun nut doing the study. You can look that up yourself. All right. So then the Clinton DOJ was like, this Clark and Gertz study was from the early 90s, right? So then Clinton was like, that's got to be wrong, right? So they commissioned another study, right, by these two people that they write books about gun violence, right? And these people concluded that 1.46 million DGUs per year. So 3 separate studies, right? And the numbers are roughly, similar.
What defines an NGV?
DGU, defensive gun use. That's a great question. What defines it? Right? National Crime Victimization Surveys, they say only 50 to 100,000 DGUs. Well, that's because they only record defensive gun uses in response to crimes that are reported. Let's say I'm walking down the street, right, and someone comes to me and says, hey, give your wallet. And I'm in North Carolina, I'm like, back away, sir. And they go away. Am I going to report that to the police? Maybe, maybe not. Right? It's hard to define. It's very hard to define.
Anytime you use your
right.
gun to defend
Right.
yourself.
So how these people did it was they asked us a sample size, and they asked them direct questions like, did you ever have to use a gun to defend someone? Right. Then they used statistics to extrapolate the results to the country. And yeah.
If I was in favor of guns, wouldn't I maybe want to just say yeah, of course it's protected me, and tell a story exactly like
that's
that.
a great point. That's a great point, right? If you own a CCW, chances are you're pro-gun, right? And you want to say, yeah, I would have died, right?
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna get to that. So let's do some, very rough estimation, right? That's not really scientific, but it'll get you thinking. So in this Gertz study, they found that 15.7% of the people involved in DGUs believe they almost certainly saved their life or someone else, and then 14.6% respondents believe that they probably would have. So this is just this isn't scientific at all. This is just me, trying to get the thinking juices going. Let's say 9 out of 10 of the almost certainly people were wrong, and 99 out of the 100 probably say something like people were wrong, right? So about 1.7% of the 1.46 million DGUs saved a life. That means 25,000 lives might have been saved. Maybe this is not scientific, but it's something to think about, right? You can believe this, you can think this is totally whatever, but it's just something to think about. We can skip this. We're running out of time. We can skip Australia. I really like to talk about Australia. So, well, actually, just this quick point. So people like to use Australia as they did the mandatory gun buyback program in 1996, and gun violence dipped, right? But it was actually dipping a lot before 1996. So is the cause the gun buyback or something else? Question. It's a question, right? There's no answer. By the way, this is from Vox, so they screwed themselves with this one. I don't know why they put this graph up. This clearly shows a declining trend, around 1989. Switzerland's got an interesting gun culture, right? That's in public. That's in a public bus. She's holding the newer version of rifles they use, and he's holding what they used back in the day. Now, Switzerland has a mandatory military program. You have to serve in the military, and then once you're done with the military, I don't know if they make you keep the rifle or if it's really easy, but a lot of people in Sichuan keep rifles. So what's the homicide rate?
But they have way different ammo control laws.
Right, I'm gonna get to that. So right, so there's only what 0.5. Where's the number? 0.5 gun homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. Now I'm not trying to make the argument that more guns is less, right? What I'm trying to say is that is it really guns or is it stuff like Switzerland's a pretty homogeneous country, right? Whereas the U.S., it's a lot of diversity, right? There's a lot of, differences in wealth, right? There's gangs, right? There's big cities. So are these the cause of violence or is it guns? Just something to think about, right? And then, right, yeah, I mentioned that, different factors, poverty, socioeconomic issues, diversity gains, even cultural identity and history. Switzerland, they have this culture of, like, back in the World War II, like, they were like, everyone get a gun in case the Nazis invade. Like, that's part of their culture, right? So they're okay with guns. And my final piece is police obligations. So, this is kind of jumping, but how many people think that the police are responsible for your safety? No, thanks for being honest. Like I theoretically, practically, whatever you want. Ideally, in a perfect world, right? Letter of law.
I think they have a duty of care.
Okay. Y'all are wrong. And let's go through it. So in around the 1970s, these three women, Carolyn Warren, Joanne Taliaferro, Miriam Douglas, they were victims of break-in, rape, and assault. And they called the dispatcher. They're like, "Hey, these guys are about to, they're about to do harmful things to us." And the dispatcher's like, "Oh, don't worry. Like, they'll come. Police will come." The police came. They kind of looked around the house. They left, right? And nothing happened. These women still got assaulted, among other things. So then they sued District of Columbia. They're like, "What the fuck? You guys are supposed to protect us, right?" And then it's a lot of text, but they sued them for the dispatcher's failure to forward the 6:23 a.m. call with a proper degree of urgency, failed to follow standard procedures. And the court's like, well, in a 4-3 decision, the court was like, the duty to provide public service is owed to the public at large, and absent a special relationship between the police and the individual, no specific legal duty exists. Shocking, right? You know what this means? This means that the police have an obligation to protect the public, this abstract, the public, but they don't have an obligation to protect you.
Isn't that just like best faith effort though? Like there'll always be mistakes. Just like sometimes they won't get there in time, and they can't be sued for that.
That admittedly pretty clearly says like they don't have to protect
Yeah,
you.
it could be a mistake, but it could be. Let's say their car broke down, right? Let's say they, for some reason, they didn't do a thorough check, like in this case right here. They're not going to get in trouble for it because they're not obligated. So, who here is surprised by that?
This is at a state level, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
it's still
it's a state.
Like it's still very surprising.
Yeah. So the fact is, according to the Supreme Court, this I have to go back and look at this case, but this was a Supreme Court ruling. The police do not have a constitutional duty to protect individuals. So it was at state level, but then in the Supreme Court, I think in 2000s, we're like, all right, yeah. And this case was a murder. I think someone's baby got killed, or someone got killed. It was like a domestic violence case. So yeah, the police, you specifically, I'm looking at all you right now, the police don't have the duty to protect you specifically. So who does? Well, a lot of us are young adults. We might be 23, 24, 25, 26, or whoever, right? And we've lived all our lives, right? And this is me, this is opinion time, right? When we lived all our lives, maybe your parents are responsible for our safety, then you go to college, the school is responsible for your safety. And now we're out in the real world, right? You are responsible for your own safety, not the police, not your parents anymore, not your work, you are. And to drive home that point, here are department response times to burglaries. San Francisco is 16 minutes, Santa Clara County is 19, and so on and so forth. San Jose actually doesn't report response times for some reason. I wonder why.
Never get there.
And then in places like, really, like, I don't want to say crappy, but in less fortunate places like Detroit, right? I'm sure you've seen specials where police will take an hour to get there on like pretty serious calls. And a lot can happen from 16 minutes to an hour. Like if someone breaks in right now, or if you guys go home and someone breaks in, like are the police going to get to your house in time? So it's just something to think about. I'm not gonna. You all probably know my opinion, but again, it's something to think about. So yeah, if you don't get anything from this presentation, you think I'm full of shit, I mean that's cool. But at the very least, hear my opinion, which is that we're all adults now, and we are responsible for our own safety and maybe the safety of our families. Not the police, not your work, not your parents or whatever. So here's some food for thought. We're at the question stage. Why all the focus on assault weapons instead of handguns? Who do gun laws affect more, law-abiding citizens or criminals? What laws would you implement? How would you go about doing it? Would you buy a gun? With the information learned today, do you think it's too easy to get a gun, too hard, just right, blah, blah, blah. And that concludes my presentation, so any questions?
Where's the test?
The test? The test was y'all taking my AR-15 and following the rules. So if y'all didn't point it at anyone, kept your finger off the trigger, figured out it was loaded, y'all passed the test.
I have a question and I guess a comment. Do you have any experience buying guns from gun shows?
Oh, gun shows. All right, let's talk about gun shows. Going back to what he said. So I didn't purchase it, but my friend went to a gun show in North Carolina. He bought an SKS, and he still had to go through the FFL background check. But so this is what I mean by both sides are right. So if you ask like anti-gunners, right, they'll be like, "Oh my God, gun shows are like gun buying free-for-alls. Like there's no regulation." And if you ask gun supporters, are like, "Wait, it's all regulated." The answer actually is it's a little bit of both. So the vast majority, right, is you have to go through FFL, right? If you buy from like a dealer, like a firearms dealer, it has to go through FFL. But there's this thing called private transactions, right? And what's a private transaction? Well, if let's say a widow, right, inherits her dead husband's guns, right? She can just sell them at a gun show, right? It's technically a private transaction because she doesn't make her living selling guns. Same thing if I wanted to give Uncle John my rifle, right? We're private individuals and my livelihood isn't dependent on selling guns, right? So yes, in that case, most states you don't have to go through a background check. California, you do no matter what, so that's a California specific law. North Carolina, you do if it's a pistol. But Texas, Arizona, and a bunch of other states, there are private transfers. Now, what do I mean by when I say both sides are right? Well, yes, there are private transfers and there are, you don't have to go through FFO to go through them, but those constitute a minority. And if you go to a gun show, which y'all should go to, by the way, they're really cool. If you go to a gun show, you'll find that the vast majority of booths, right, are licensed dealers, and you have to go through the background check. So, yeah. That lady in the back.
Okay. Hi. My name is Roxanne.
Hi, Roxanne.
I've always had a negative opinion towards guns.
That's cool.
And I wanted to clear up that my negative opinion by actually trying to shoot a gun. So I shot a gun in Vietnam for the first time, and I went to Texas to shoot one. And I tried to submerge myself in the gun community, and you guys are all very friendly, in my opinion. My only question is, let's say if guns are not the cause of gun violence, then I'm curious to ask, I guess, what you think exactly is the cause of the violence, and also you touched on the fact that there's also a lot of diversity in the States and a lot of gangs, and I also have to ask, you don't feel like if we take the toys away from these guys, if we take the enabler, which are the guns, you don't feel like that will, I'm not saying that's gonna like boom, magic solve the whole issue, but would that not improve the situation?
I got you. Oh, you got this? You're gonna speak for me? All right, go ahead.
And I have a second question.
Sure.
Which is, I can see the gun culture being a hobby. It's people are passionate about this hobby. You don't feel like we can find a hobby that this doesn't happen to kill people? Like, if let's say like I have a passion for right now I have a passion for climbing. If I knew climbing could potentially kill someone, like by bouldering I could kill somebody, or the act of bouldering could kill someone, I would 100% drop it immediately.
So I think I disagree with one part of that second question. I'm gonna let him speak for me first. Is that so? How do I actually perform my hobby with shooting guns? I'll tell you what I do. I go to the range, comply with all the laws, and I shoot paper and I shoot steel.
Yeah.
That hobby doesn't kill people.
But unfortunately, not everyone is as nice as you. I wish everyone that operated guns was as nice and educated and as sane as you.
Right.
That's not
But
the case.
I could be an asshole, right? Some of my friends would argue that I am, but doesn't mean that I'm dangerous, right? Like I've been to a lot of gun ranges, and you do get some like pompous assholes like, oh, I got this sickest gun, right? But they're not gonna kill you, right? They're just still there to shoot paper, right? And shoot steel. So I do have a little bit of a problem with the way you phrase it. I think I get what you're saying. The way you phrase it was the hobby kills people. Well, my hobby isn't shooting people. My hobby is shooting paper. I have it for self-defense. So, but I think I see what you're saying. Like, why would you choose something that's what you think is inherently violent, right? And I think that's where our opinions differ. I don't think shooting guns. I shot a lot of guns. I don't think shooting guns is inherently violent. I think it's a lot of fun and it takes a lot of skill. Same thing with archery, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I wouldn't. I guess maybe this is like a matter of opinion, right? And the last thing I'll say is that if you aren't comfortable with shooting guns, or comfortable with like guns because they're used to kill people, that's cool, man. Like everyone has a right to do what they should do. But as a gunner myself, I don't think the government has a right to restrict that right for me. So that's my answer.
I see. I'm glad you brought up that archery part because, for sure, archery could also be used as a weapon to kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a practical way to kill people, so you don't see huge killings where people carrying a bow and killing
Right. And yeah, guns
are actually very convenient for
Right.
killing people.
Guns make killing people easier for sure because you don't have to like actually do the dirty work. You just press the trigger, right? But just so my only comment about that is yes, I definitely agree. Like I think you'd be insane not to agree. I'll get to you in a second. I think you'd be insane not to agree, but just because it makes killing people easier doesn't mean that it's the cause of killing people.
Sure, but
That's my opinion.
Being, and I 100% understand. I might be offending you, but I have to voice this. It's being a hobbyist. You are adding to the economy that supports these easily convenient weapons to kill people. You're like basically funding the possibility of people killing people.
So how I sleep at night is that there are millions of gun owners in the U.S. and a very, very, very small percentage of
I don't
them.
mean to target you. I'm not.
No. It's all good. I'm not offended at all. Yeah. No. It's cool. So how I sleep at night, which is I think where you're getting to that question, like how are you supporting this industry, is that out of the millions and millions of law-abiding gun owners, and I'm sure you can find statistics, but this is my opinion, like a very, very, very small percentage of them use those guns they legally have to kill other people. Look at countries like, not countries, well, it might as well be a country. Look at states like Texas, right? Or, Arizona, even Vermont, right? It's really easy to get, you can open carry in Arizona, you can open carry in Utah, it's really easy to get a gun in Texas, right? Like almost everyone has a gun, well, that's an exaggeration. A lot of people have guns in Texas, right? But you don't see Texas being some crazy killing spree state, right? What you see is places like Washington, D.C. with strict gun laws and Chicago with super strict gun laws, right? Where law-abiding citizens have a really hard time getting guns, right? So I don't mind that I support this industry because the people that buy from this industry are by and large law-abiding, and the people that we really have to be worried about are the criminals that don't care about laws, right? And I think that's not a gun issue. My personal belief, I think that's a socioeconomic issue, a cultural issue, like Chicago, right? Chicago is pretty fucked up, right? Chicago's cool. I love Chicago rap. Chance the Rapper, great person. But Chicago's like it's kind of used a lot by both gun control and gun supporters. So, and then you have places like San Francisco, right? Oh, it's not like San Francisco has like a lot of like crime, right? But they have a really strict gun laws there. So it's tough to say. But that's my answer. Sorry. What's up?
Oh, all right.
I'll get to you. He was first.
Answering your question a bit. So California has one of the strictest gun laws in the entire United States, but we have the highest gun homicide rate by quite a large margin. And actually, you know how you had that chart where you showed a decline in gun violence? It's actually directly correlated with the increase in abortions.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's
Interesting.
Like, it's perfectly on top of each other.
Holy crap! Why is that?
Alright, so it's because like so when you have a lot of people with low education, they don't really understand like birth control or whatever, and they don't have access to abortion. So
Oh,
they have
right.
a bunch of kids that they can't feed, and then
I see what you're saying.
They have to,
Society can't support the extra babies, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting. I didn't know that. I'd love to see a source about that. He was before you. Sorry.
So this is sort of bring up, I guess, another food for thought, I guess. So you mentioned that I think it was the CDC study was about the death rates, and I think the fact that it was close to vehicles is kind of interesting because if you look at vehicles, like you could see that okay, a lot of people are using vehicles correctly and they're not trying to kill people. You have some people who do not care about speed limits and buy ridiculous, like they have a hobby of getting really fancy cars, really fast cars. There's no necessarily limits on those, but John, there's possibilities that you could kill someone either by accident because you carelessly drive your car, or pull and go, or because you drove really fast and lost control, something like that. But when you look at the car industry looking forward, it's like you can see on the horizon potentials to make cars safer and different technologies to make things safer. Hopefully to bring that rate down. And I guess as an outside observer who has fired a gun, I can see the appeal of it. I guess for some people, it's like I wish there was as obvious a thing in the horizon to try to increase gun safety for people who do own guns.
I got you. Right, because you know, like there's self-driving cars coming out. The new Tesla's pretty fucking baller. It's got like the lane checks, right, and then airbags. You always hear about safety ratings. I don't really have an answer to that question. I think
biometric scanning, right? The biometric fingerprints.
Yeah, that is for that to be commercially available, still a bit off. A bit of ways because that's really expensive.
Like that'd be nice someday.
Yeah. And I think by and large I agree with you. And this is just a comment. Is I think the best way to forward gun safety and increase like kind of with cars is just education. Kind of like what I'm doing right now. I'm going to toot my own horn. Yes, I think it's good to understand what guns are, what the gun safety is, and I think. Not just me, but now if you guys talk to your friends, you can say, okay, you can educate them. I think the biggest hindrance to guns being safer is actually, the lack of information, right? I know people from my home state of North Carolina that grew up with guns since they could barely walk, but they never had issues because their parents were like, this is not a toy, right? But it's not evil. It's not inherently evil. It's something that can be very dangerous. We're going to educate you about it, right?
At the same time, we have all kinds of programs for about driving safely in terms of don't text, put your seatbelt on.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is that I think there's a kind of a fight between trying to educate people about guns and then sort of being cast as a pariah, as like a gun nut, right? Either by the media or liberal people or whatever, right? When I first came on to do this presentation, I was unsure of the reception I was going to get, to be honest. But y'all have been great. I love y'all. So, yeah, I think this is personal opinion. I think the way the media is now, the United States media, it's kind of hard to forward that knowledge without at least some apprehension. When in fact it should be readily available and freely given. So that's my only comment about that. He was next.
Yeah. So it sounds like you did a lot of research for this, and you know this stuff really well. And I was googling this like a year ago, and I was trying to figure out gun violence and homicides, I guess suicides as well, by income. And it's really hard to find research on it because it's not something Americans want to talk about.
Right.
Have you seen research on that?
No, I haven't. And I think the place that would do research on that would be the CDC, right, or something of that nature. But it's funny because
they can't research it.
They can't research it because Congress blocked it. and as a gun person, I think that's ridiculous. I am of the opinion that the figures out there, the statistics out there actually support gun ownership. That's my opinion based on what I read. So to me, it's that's crazy why they would suggest
I think that was
research.
This might be entirely wrong, and I apologize for this, but I think that was a push by the NRA to ban that kind of research.
Probably, but the NRA is also kind of its own beast. It's kind of like a necessary evil to gun owners. He was next. Sorry guys. Got it.
We're gonna take one more, and then you can talk to Jerry afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, thank you so much for bringing this talk, and it's always really awkward coming across an extremely hostile audience, which I'm assuming what this mostly is. So as it is obviously a joint goal of both gun supporters and people who are very strongly in favor of gun control to reduce gun deaths.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
You mentioned that education would act as a very strong component of that, but that I think would largely prevent accidental gun deaths.
Right.
Largely the media coverage has been around intentional gun deaths.
Right.
So I'm first of all, I'm curious about what you think could be done with that, and also it seems like you were in favor of some level of gun control.
Sure.
Because like the point you brought up before about you can't walk in and immediately purchase ammunition.
Right.
So I'm curious to like what your stance is on.
So, that's now you're asking for my pure opinion,
Yes,
which is
how it should be.
okay. So, I don't have an easy answer on how to stop gun deaths because I wouldn't call them gun deaths. I'll just call them homicides in general.
Sure.
So your question to me is how would you stop homicides in general? And that's a very fucking hard question to answer. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like there's like that slide before. There's a ton of factors. The institutions that support poor individuals, schools, right? Whatever you think about the death or of the nuclear family, I don't even know. Like there's so many things out there. What I would like to see. Okay, I'm going to answer your second part of the question with what I would like to see California do. I would like to see California. I think with any compromise, there actually has to be compromise. The problem with politics now is that there's no compromise. It's either like Wild West, as the Democrats put it, or you're going to take all the guns, as the Republicans put it. So I would like to see California implement a compromise, such as let's make a registry like we register our vehicles, right? Like let's register our guns. Like if you own a gun, you're in some database. Like if you're not a law-abiding citizen, then you have an issue. You have a reason to be concerned, but if you're a law-abiding citizen, you give a shit, right? But at the same time, I would like to see California sort of take and give by taking out this ridiculous bullet button law. I think it does nothing.
You can have a bullet trigger too, or
Yeah.
a lever, and it just bypasses
Yeah.
the law.
I think exactly. It's called like a radlock or something, but like it's ridiculous. I think they should ban the 10 round cap. Like, okay, y'all are probably wondering how hard is it to cap this magazine? It is not hard. It is. I did it in North Carolina. It takes like 2 minutes. It's not like some involved process where you have to weld something or like fuse something together. You just pop this off, you take out the cap, and there you go. I firmly believe that this 10 round magazine law, it just fucks over us law-abiding citizens, and the criminal wouldn't care about it. So, and then suppressors and short-barrel rifles, that's, kind of like on the fence. Like, I would like to have them. I think they're cool, but like, whether they're needed, who knows, right? But my point is that I would like to see actual like push-pull from the California government. So, implement registration. If you wanna keep track of animal sales, that's totally cool. Switzerland knows it, right? But at the same time, get rid of some of these ridiculous, magazine and bullet button laws.
So do you support the law? So it sounded like the ammunition purchase laws about the delay
Oh.
are not universal in all states.
No, ammunition purchase. So, so the new laws in California are going to take place in 2017. Up until then, I've been ordering my ammunition online. There's no law against that. Why? Because it's cheap. Ammunition's kind of expensive if you shoot a lot. And yeah, there's, maybe some states like New York, but up until now, California doesn't really have a law against it. So, do I support an ammunition ban? Or not a ban, an ammunition registration? I would support it as long as they threw us gun supporters a bone, so to speak. Like if they instituted a ammunition registry, but they gave us magazine catches, I'd be like, hey, at least we're making progress, right? Because they both make sense. Like it makes sense to get rid of the bullet button law, and it makes sense maybe to like register ammunition. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's fine.
So I guess something that's kind of honing in on is like what gun control things, what control aspects of gun control do you think actually do contribute to preventing mass homicides? Because I think most of them sound like they're
mass homicides, like mass shootings.
Right. So which of those laws do you think are actually helpful towards the cause of?
Off the top of my head, none of them.
I got this.
One sec. You stole my thunder, bro. I think. So I skipped over the mass shooting slide. So there's two conflicting. Sorry, Owen. I know we're going really bit. I know there's two conflicting like figures. Institutions by Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, will have you believe that mass shootings only occur in like 14% of 40% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. The rest of the mass shootings occur in zones where you can have a gun to defend yourself, so it doesn't really matter. Republicans are like, no, 92% of mass shootings happen in gun-free zones, right? And you all know what a gun-free zone is, right? You just can't have a gun. Republicans like to call them free fire zones. I don't know. I didn't really go too deep into the research of gun-free zones. I do know that. So I did some very quick research. I do know that Orlando Pulse, San Bernardino, Aurora, Sandy Hook, Virginia Tech, Columbine, they were all gun-free zones. And those were pretty widely publicized. So how do I think? I don't think any of the gun control measures actually do anything. I think gun-free zones. This is personal opinion. I think gun-free zones are. Okay, I'm just gonna put it bluntly. I think gun-free zones are a fucking terrible idea. Like, why would you disarm everyone, have a bunch of kids or a bunch of innocents together, and not allow them to protect themselves? That's just my opinion. I think schools should have security officers that are able to arm themselves. Whether teachers should be able to arm themselves, I on the fence, but I'm kind of leaning toward it. So I'm going to answer your question by not saying which gun control measures I think help. I'm just going to say that this right here, this is my personal opinion. Gun-free zones, I think they do not help at all. They make the situation worse. You know what doesn't get publicized? Mass shootings that are about to happen that are stopped, right? So you can look up Clackamas Town Center, Arapahoe High, and then another school I can't remember the name of. It was in some ABC feature. Though, I mean, no one's going to sensationalize those stories, right? Because nothing bad happened. Someone stopped the shooter. But when something bad does happen, yeah, it's going to be sensationalized. You know, people are going to dance on graves. And yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Cool. Thank you very much.
If y'all have more questions,